My name is Melissa Walker, and I'm 28 years old. The wedding invitation from my brother James sits unopened on my kitchen counter in Denver. Yet, Denver, not California where my family thinks I still live. It's been over a year since I moved states, and not one of them noticed. Not a single question about my new address, my new job, my new life. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should care most. Trust me, this story might hit close to home. I grew up in a typical suburban neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, with my parents Linda and Thomas Walker, my older brother James, who's 32 now, and my younger sister Ashley, who's 24. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family. Nice house, good jobs, 3 kids spaced perfectly apart. But from the inside, the dynamics were clear from day one. James was the golden child, Ashley was the baby of the family, and I was, well, just there. James was the star quarterback, class president. My parents attended every single one of his football games, driving hours if needed, rescheduling anything that conflicted. Ashley, being the youngest, naturally got attention for being the baby. Her dance recitals were family events. My mom would spend weeks preparing her costumes by hand. Dad recorded every performance, creating elaborate video compilations with music and effects. For her 16th birthday, they surprised her with a brand new car with a giant red bow on top. I still remember hiding my disappointment behind a smile as I helped inflate balloons for her surprise party. And then there was me, reliable, responsible Melissa. Even highlighted it on the family calendar hanging on the refrigerator. The day arrived and I stood at the podium, scanning the audience for familiar faces as I delivered the speech I'd worked on for months. Empty seats. They had gone to James's baseball tournament instead. They didn't even call to tell me they weren't coming. Your brother needed the support, my mother explained later. It was an important game for college scouts. You understand, right? You're the smart one. You don't need us there to do well. College was more of the same. James got a full ride from my parents for whatever his scholarship didn't cover. Apartment, car, spending money. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through Arizona State. Barista in the morning, bookstore in the afternoon, and restaurant hostess on weekends. When I graduated with honors in graphic design, my parents attended but spent most of the ceremony talking about James's new job offer. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became my mother's unofficial motto. I developed a pattern of overachieving, hoping that eventually, I'd do something impressive enough to capture their attention. I graduated top of my class. I'd share my latest accomplishment only to have the subject quickly changed to James's promotion or Ashley's new boyfriend. After college, I moved to an apartment in San Francisco, just a few hours from where my parents had relocated after retirement. I thought being physically closer might help strengthen our relationship. I visited every month, helped with household projects, designed Ashley's wedding invitations for free, created logos for Dad's retirement hobby-turned-business, and redesigned Mom's entire kitchen. I was there, present, trying so hard to be seen. But family gatherings continued to revolve around James and Ashley. I'd sit quietly, adding nothing but polite smiles to conversations that excluded me. When I'd bring up something about my life, eyes would glaze over or someone would interrupt with, "Oh, that reminds me," and steer the conversation elsewhere. My apartment in San Francisco was small but comfortable, decorated with my own artwork and finds from local flea markets. I lived alone with a cat named Pixel, working remotely most days for a design agency. Despite living only 3 hours from my parents, and spent most of the time on the phone with Ashley about her relationship problems. That was my life for 6 years, close enough to be available when needed but never important enough to be valued. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. A job offer from a prestigious design studio in Denver. Better pay, creative director position. Opportunity to work with major national clients. My first instinct was to call my parents, but I paused with my finger hovering over the call button. What would they say? Would they even care? I created a pros and cons list instead. Pros: career advancement, lower cost of living, beautiful scenery, fresh start. Cons: leaving family behind, moving to a city where I knew no one, winter snow, which I wasn't used to, and the uncertainty of change. But as I stared at that list, I realized something important. My connection to my family existed almost entirely in my head. I was the one making all the effort. The job offer letter tucked in my purse. I waited until dessert, when there was finally a lull in the conversation about James's latest client and Ashley's vacation plans. I have some news, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been offered a job in Denver. It's a great opportunity, creative director position. Dad nodded absently, scrolling through his phone. That's nice, honey. As James launched into a story about his important client meeting, I organized a goodbye dinner at my favorite restaurant the following weekend. I sent invitations to my parents, James, Ashley, and a few extended family members. I reserved a private room, ordered champagne. I waited at the table for 2 hours. No one showed. My mother texted at the 90-minute mark. Something came up with Ashley. Can we reschedule? No one else bothered to respond at all. The next 3 weeks were a blur of packing, paperwork, and preparations. Not once did anyone from my family offer to help. I donated furniture, hired movers, changed my address all alone. On my last night in the apartment, I looked around at the empty rooms and felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The drive to Denver took 3 days. I took the scenic route, windows down, music loud, stopping whenever something caught my eye. The landscape changed from California's coastal views to Nevada's stark desert beauty, then Utah's dramatic red rocks, and finally Colorado's majestic mountains. With each state line I crossed, I felt the weight on my shoulders lighten. My new apartment in Denver had large windows overlooking the city. The design studio welcomed me warmly. People actually remembered my name, asked about my weekend, invited me to lunch. It was disorienting at first, this feeling of being acknowledged. Mom would put me on speaker while cooking, Dad would watch TV in the background, and both would find reasons to end the call when James or Ashley beeped in on the other line. I made a point of sending my new address to everyone, even mailing cute, I've moved cards with my contact information. I posted photos of my new place on social media, tagging family members. No one commented. When I mentioned my new address in phone conversations, it was met with vague acknowledgments and quick subject changes. Weeks turned into months. I established a routine in Denver, hiking on weekends, joining a book club, making friends at work. Emma, a graphic designer at my company, became my closest friend. She invited me to family dinners, introduced me to her circle of friends, and showed me around the city. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be welcomed, to have someone genuinely interested in my life. My weekly calls home became monthly, then sporadic. No one seemed to notice the difference. When I did call, the conversations remained superficial, weather, general health, brief updates. No one ever asked for my address or mentioned visiting, or seemed to register that I was building a life somewhere new. 6 months after moving to Denver, I realized something shocking. Not once had anyone from my family initiated contact. Every call, every text, every email had come from me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I decided to conduct an experiment. I wouldn't reach out first. I would wait to see how long it would take for anyone to notice my absence. 1 month passed, then 2, then 6. Nothing. The holidays came and went. I received a generic family newsletter from my mother addressed to my old California apartment. The post office had forwarded it. There was a family photo from Thanksgiving dinner, a gathering I hadn't been invited to. The newsletter detailed James's job success, Ashley's engagement, and my parents' cruise plans. I woke up in my beautiful Denver apartment, with the sun rising over the mountains, and felt something unexpected: relief. The constant effort of trying to be seen by people determined not to see me had been exhausting. In Denver, I could just be myself. The wedding invitation arrived via email on a Tuesday morning, almost exactly 1 year after I'd moved to Denver. The subject line read, "James and Sophia's wedding, save the date." It was elegantly designed, clearly professionally done. Not my work, with flowing script announcing my brother's engagement to Sophia Reynolds, daughter of a prominent banking family. The digital invitation was addressed to Melissa Walker and guest, with my old California address listed for the paper invitation to follow. There was a link to their wedding website. String quartet 5-course dinner. You need to confirm right away so they can finalize the numbers. I took a deep breath. Mom, the invitation has my old address on it. What do you mean? I've talked about it on the phone. I've posted about it online. Another pause, longer this time. Well, you should have made a bigger deal about it. How were we supposed to know if you didn't tell us properly? I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the feeling of being gaslight, of having my reality denied. I did tell you, Mom. Multiple times. Well, it couldn't have been important if none of us remember it. Anyway, about the wedding, you'll need to send your RSVP right away. And please say you're bringing a date. Sophia's family is very traditional. They think it looks odd when young women come alone to weddings. Before I could respond, my phone beeped with another call. James. I need you to be there, okay? Family photos are important to Sophia's parents. Everyone needs to look the part. What does that mean? You know, dress appropriately. Do something with your hair. As a wedding gift, you know. I closed my eyes. James, I'm a creative director at one of the top design studios in the country. Place cards would cost you thousands if you hired me professionally. Come on, don't be like that. It's for family. You can just whip something up, right? Sophia has very specific ideas. She'll send you examples of what she wants copied. Before I could formulate a response that wouldn't involve screaming, my phone beeped again. I have another call coming in, I said, grateful for the interruption. Don't forget to send your current address, James replied and hung up. The next call was from my grandmother, my father's mother, the only family member who had ever really seen me. Melissa. The simple question, a genuine inquiry about my feelings rather than a demand or instruction, nearly made me break down. I'm processing, I managed to say. I thought you might be. I remember how they've always been with him. Are you in Denver now? Your mother sounded confused when I asked about you last month. A lump formed in my throat. You knew I moved? Of course, dear. You sent me that lovely card with the mountain scene. I have it on my refrigerator. I've been meaning to visit, but my hip has been giving me trouble. How are you liking Colorado? For the next 20 minutes, I had an actual conversation with someone who cared about my life, my feelings, my experiences. Grandma Ruth asked about my job, my apartment, the friends I'd made. She remembered details from our previous conversations and followed up on them. When we hung up, I felt both comforted and saddened. The contrast between her interest and my immediate family's indifference was stark. Over the next few days, the demands started rolling in. My mother called again, asking if I would design all the wedding stationery, invitations, even though they'd already been sent, programs, menus, thank you cards, everything. James said you agreed to help, she claimed. When I didn't respond immediately, she followed up with, hello? It's for James's wedding. Don't be selfish. All requiring me to take time off work and pay for cross-country flights. That evening, as I was scrolling through Instagram, I saw photos posted by Ashley. My entire family at a lake house for a weekend getaway. There was my mother, father, James, Sophia, Ashley and her boyfriend, even some aunts and uncles. Everyone smiling, toasting marshmallows around a fire, boating on the lake. I hadn't been invited or even told about it. I felt something break inside me. I closed Instagram and found myself staring at my reflection in the black screen, tears streaming down my face. I pulled out old family photos, searching for evidence that I had been part of this family, that I mattered to them in some way. In most pictures, I was on the edge of the frame, slightly out of focus, or clearly posed as an afterthought. Emma came over that night after I sent her a tearful text. She sat with me on my couch, passing tissues and listening as I poured out years of being overlooked, forgotten and dismissed. Melissa, she said finally, this isn't normal. This isn't how families are supposed to treat each other. What they're doing, it's a form of emotional neglect. I shook my head. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe I'm making too big a deal out of nothing. Is that you talking, or them? Emma asked gently. Because from where I'm sitting, your family has consistently treated you as an afterthought your entire life, and now they're demanding your time, money, and professional skills without any acknowledgement of who you are or what you need. That's not being sensitive. That's having a normal reaction to being treated like you don't matter. The next day, I had an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Matthews. I hadn't planned to discuss my family, Our sessions usually focused on work stress and adjusting to life in a new city. But once I started talking about the wedding invitation, everything else came pouring out. It sounds like you've been trying to earn your family's attention and approval your entire life, Dr. Matthews observed. But the problem isn't that you haven't done enough to deserve it. The problem is that they've established a dynamic where you're simply not given equal consideration, regardless of what you do. So what do I do now? I asked, voice small. That depends on what you want. You can continue the pattern, attend the wedding, provide free professional services, spend money and time traveling back and forth, knowing that it likely won't change how they see or treat you. Or you can establish boundaries and decide what kind of relationship you're willing to have under the current circumstances. I thought about it all evening. Around midnight, I sat down at my computer and wrote a heartfelt email to my family. I explained how I felt about being forgotten, about no one noticing I'd moved states, about being excluded from family gatherings. I described how it hurt to be acknowledged only when something was needed from me. I asked for recognition of my feelings and suggested we work on building a more balanced relationship moving forward. I ended by saying I needed time to decide about the wedding, given how things stood. I hit send before I could lose my courage. The responses started arriving within hours, each one more dismissive than the last. From my mother, "You're being dramatic as usual. We have been so supportive of your choices, even when they've been questionable. This is exactly why we sometimes find it exhausting to include you in things. Everything becomes about your feelings. James's wedding is not the time for one of your episodes." From my father, "Your mother showed me your email. This is your brother's time, don't make it about you. Family means showing up, period. I'm disappointed you would even consider not attending." From Ashley, "OMG, you always have to complicate everything. Just come to the stupid wedding and act normal for once. No one has time for your issues right now." From James, "Not sure what your problem is, but you need to get over it. This is the most important day of my life, and I need you to show up and act like part of this family. Everyone is stressed enough without your drama. I'm here if you need to talk." I stared at the responses, feeling simultaneously vindicated and devastated. It was all there in black and white, the dismissal of my feelings, the labeling of my perspective as drama, the expectation that I should set aside my needs for the family narrative. Nothing I had said had been heard or acknowledged. The next day, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to pick up. "Melissa, this has gone far enough," she began without preamble. "I've been talking with your father, and we agree that you need to stop this nonsense immediately. James is very upset by your email." "Mom, did you actually read what I wrote? I wasn't attacking anyone. I was trying to express how I've been feeling for years. See, this is exactly the problem. You're always so sensitive about everything. Do you think you're the only one with feelings? Do you think your brother doesn't have feelings about his only sister threatening to skip his wedding?" I took a deep breath. I never threatened to skip his wedding. I said I needed time to think about it given how I've been treated. There you go again, making yourself the victim. When have we ever mistreated you? We gave you everything growing up. Mom, none of you even noticed I moved to another state. For an entire year. Because you didn't make it clear. You can't expect us to keep track of every little detail of your life when you're always doing something different. If you had stayed in California like everyone else. Like everyone else? Mom, that's exactly the problem. You've never seen me as an individual with my own life and choices. I'm just supposed to fit into the family in whatever way is most convenient for everyone else. But I've never been treated like I'm actually part of it. I'm just background. Someone to call when you need something designed for free or money borrowed or a presence at a family photo. It would probably be better for everyone. Something snapped inside me. Is that what you want, Mom? For me not to come? What I want is for you to stop making everything about yourself and act like a proper member of this family for once. But if you can't do that, then yes. Maybe you should stay in Denver with your new life that's apparently so much better than anything we could offer you. Mom, that's not what I need to go. Your father wants to talk to you. There was a rustling sound, and then my father's voice came on the line. Melissa, I'm very disappointed in you. Family comes first no matter what. Your brother deserves better than this from you. Dad, I just want to be treated like I matter. You matter to us. You've always mattered. But right now this wedding matters more than your hurt feelings. If you can't understand that, then maybe your mother is right. Maybe you shouldn't come. Tears were streaming down my face now. So that's the ultimatum? Either I pretend everything is fine and provide free professional services for a brother who barely acknowledges my existence, or I'm cut off from the family. No one is cutting you off, my father said, sounding irritated. You're the one causing problems where there don't need to be any. Just tell us you'll be at the wedding, help with what needs to be done, and we can all move past this unpleasantness. I closed my eyes, feeling a strange calm wash over me. I can't do that, Dad. Not this time. Then I guess you've made your choice, he said. It's the one time everything should be about me, not your issues. I always defended you when everyone said you were difficult, but maybe they were right all along. I turned my phone back on to find more texts from Ashley, way to make Mom cry again. Missed calls from both parents and a single message from my grandmother. Call me when you can, dear. I called her first, my voice still rough from crying. Oh, Melissa, she said when I told her what had happened. I'm so sorry. Your mother called me in quite a state last night, telling me you were refusing to attend the wedding. I had a feeling there was more to the story. I never actually said I wouldn't go, I explained. I just asked to be treated with basic consideration. But apparently that's too much to ask. It shouldn't be, my grandmother said firmly. And the fact that they've made it an ultimatum speaks volumes. You know, your grandfather, God rest his soul, was very much like your father and James. Charming to the outside world, but at home? I see myself in you, the peacemaker, the one who tries so hard to be loved. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I don't want to end up resentful, I whispered. Then don't make my mistakes. She said simply, stand your ground now, while you're young enough to build the life you deserve. After we hung up, I sat down at my computer and wrote a second email, calmer and more direct than the first. I explained that I would not be attending the wedding under the current circumstances, but that I was open to rebuilding our relationship if they were willing to acknowledge my feelings and treat me with respect. I clarified that this wasn't about the wedding itself, but about years of being overlooked and undervalued. I ended by saying I loved them and would be here when they were ready to have an honest conversation. The silence that followed was deafening. Days passed without response. On social media, wedding preparations continued. Ashley posted photos of bridesmaid dress fittings. My mother shared details about flower arrangements and venue tours. It was as if I had ceased to exist. Then 2 weeks later the text started, angry, accusatory messages from Ashley about how I was ruining everything, and making Mom cry every day, and stressing James out before the biggest day of his life. My mother's emails were worse, long, guilt-laden manifestos about my selfishness, my ingratitude, all the sacrifices they had made for me over the years. You'll regret this decision for the rest of your life, she wrote. Family is forever, but only if you're actually there. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I focused on my life in Denver, my work, my friends. She was coming to visit me in Denver. Your mother thinks I'm visiting my friend Mabel in San Diego, she confided. I didn't lie. I am going to see Mabel after I spend a few days with you. But I wanted us to have some time together. When she arrived, I was shocked by how frail she looked, smaller and more stooped than I remembered. But her eyes were bright and her mind sharp as ever. We spent 3 wonderful days together. I showed her around Denver, introduced her to Emma, took her to my favorite restaurants. In the evenings we talked about family patterns, about standing up for oneself, about finding joy outside of others' expectations. Your grandfather was a good man in many ways, she told me one night as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset over the mountains. But he could never see past his own desires to what others might need. Your father learned that from him. And James learned it from your father. Do you think they'll ever change? I asked. She patted my hand. People can surprise you, but they have to want to change. And that usually requires a good reason. Maybe you standing your ground will give them that reason. Or maybe it won't. The important thing is that you're breaking the pattern for yourself. You remind me of her. She was the quiet backbone of our family, just like you. But unlike me, she never let anyone make her feel less than. I want you to have that strength too. I wore those earrings the weekend of James's wedding. Not to the ceremony, of course, I wasn't there. Instead, Emma and I went camping in the mountains, deliberately placing ourselves somewhere with no cell service. It was both an act of self-preservation and rebellion, choosing myself over the family drama for perhaps the first time in my life. When we returned to civilization, my phone was flooded with messages, angry texts from Ashley and my parents. A single curt email from James noting my absence had been explained to Sophia's family as a health emergency, and a gentle check-in from my grandmother. I responded only to my grandmother, assuring her I was fine and thanking her again for her visit. To the others, I maintained my silence. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said. The week after the wedding was strangely quiet. The angry messages stopped. My social media feeds were filled with wedding photos, my parents beaming proudly beside James and his beautiful bride, Ashley smiling in her bridesmaid dress. Extended family gathered in elegant groups. I was conspicuously absent, of course, a hole in the family portrait that no one acknowledged. Despite preparing myself for this moment, seeing the photos hit harder than I expected. I closed my laptop and went for a long walk along the river trail near my apartment. Emma came over that evening with takeout and wine. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better than I expected, actually," I said, realizing it was true. It hurts to see them all together without me, but it also makes me see clearly what I've known all along. I was never really part of that picture, even when I was physically in it. "Their loss," Emma said firmly. "Now tell me more about this guy you've been seeing." "Mark, right?" My phone pinged with a text. It was Ashley. "Hope you're happy with yourself. Mom cried during the family photos because you weren't there. Way to make the wedding about you after all." I showed Emma the text. "See what I mean? Even my absence is framed as an attack on them, not as a consequence of how they treated me." "Don't respond," Emma advised. "It's exactly what she wants, to pull you back into the drama. You've been clear about your boundaries. Stick to them." I nodded and put my phone away. We spent the rest of the evening talking about everything except my family, Mark, Emma's promotion at work, the pottery exhibition I was considering entering. It felt good to exist in a world where I wasn't defined by my family role or lack thereof. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely peaceful. I went for a run in the park, breathing in the crisp Colorado air, watching the sun rise over the mountains. When I returned home, I did something I'd been considering for weeks. I ordered a beautiful handcrafted serving platter from an artisan I admired, to be sent to James and Sophia's home address with a simple card. "Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness. Love, Melissa." It wasn't a grand gesture or an apology, just a simple acknowledgement of their marriage, and a small offering of goodwill despite everything that had happened. I didn't expect a response, and for several weeks I didn't get one. Life continued. I threw myself into work, taking on a major campaign for a national client that required long hours but fed my creative soul. I saw Mark more frequently. He was kind, thoughtful, and refreshingly direct in his communication. I spent weekends exploring Colorado with Emma and our growing circle of friends. I continued therapy, working through the family patterns that had shaped me, and learning to recognize my own worth outside of others' validation. Social media showed me glimpses of my family's life continuing without me. My parents' anniversary dinner, Ashley's promotion at work, James and Sophia returning from their honeymoon in the Maldives. No one reached out directly. It was as if I had been erased, the troublesome middle child finally removed from the family narrative. Interesting since the wedding. "Call me when you can." When we spoke that evening, my grandmother filled me in on what she called the aftermath. "Your absence was noticed, despite what they might want you to believe," she told me. "Sophia's family asked about you. Apparently James had talked you up as some big-shot designer in earlier conversations. Your father made up some story about you being too sick to travel, but it fell apart when someone mentioned your social media posts about hiking that weekend. I wasn't there, but your mother called me in quite a state the next day. Apparently, Sophia confronted James about lying about your absence, which led to an argument. Or maybe," my grandmother suggested gently, You're forcing some much-needed honesty into a family that's built itself on carefully maintained appearances. The wedding drama and subsequent scrutiny from Sophia's family had triggered some sort of reckoning. She'd never admit it's because of you, my grandmother said as we walked through the Denver Botanic Gardens. But I think you're standing up for yourself cracks something open that can't be easily closed again. Has she said anything about me? I asked, trying not to sound too hopeful. Not directly, but she did mention that your old room is still exactly as you left it. Would that be acceptable to you? I stared at the screen, reading and rereading those two sentences. Not quite an olive branch, but perhaps a tentative reaching out. I replied with equal brevity. Yes, that would be fine. Let me know when you have dates in mind. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I received a text from James, the first since his angry message after I declined to attend the wedding. Got your wedding gift. Sophia loves it. Thanks. Again, not exactly warm, but an acknowledgement nonetheless. I responded simply. I'm glad she likes it. Hope you're both well. I spent Thanksgiving with Mark's family, warm, boisterous people who asked questions about my work and actually listened to the answers. His mother hugged me when I arrived and said, Mark has told us so much about you. We're so happy you could join us. Such a simple thing, but it brought tears to my eyes. As Christmas approached, I debated whether to send gifts to my family. In the end, I decided on simple, thoughtful presents, a leather-bound notebook for my father, who had recently taken up journaling according to my grandmother, a scarf from a local artisan for my mother, a gift card to Ashley's favorite restaurant. I expected nothing in return and was surprised when a package arrived containing gifts from each of them. Nothing extravagant, but evidence that some thought had gone into the selections. My grandmother called on Christmas Eve. Your mother mentioned you sent gifts, she said. She seemed touched. I think she's starting to realize what she's been missing. I'm not holding my breath, I replied, but without the bitterness that would have colored such a statement months earlier. Wise. My grandmother agreed, but open to possibilities. That's my girl. The new year brought unexpected news. My grandmother decided to move to Boulder, just 30 minutes from Denver. I'm too old for harsh winters, she explained, but I want to be near family, and you're the only one who makes time for me anyway. Something had shifted in my communication with my family. The texts and emails, while still relatively surface level, came more frequently and with slightly more personal content. My mother asked about my current projects. My father sent a photo of their new dog. Ashley called to ask my advice about a career decision. In late March, James sent an email that stopped me in my tracks. Sophia and I are considering a trip to Denver next month. Would you be open to meeting for dinner? Just the 3 of us. After consulting with Dr. Matthews, I agreed. We met at a neutral location, an upscale restaurant downtown that none of us had been to before. The first few minutes were awkward, filled with small talk about the weather and the menu. But after our drinks arrived, James cleared his throat. I owe you an apology, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. Sophia has helped me see that I haven't been a good brother to you. For a long time. I nearly dropped my glass. Thank you for saying that. Sophia, who had been quietly observing, it made me question a lot of things. We've been in couples therapy, James admitted, looking uncomfortable. Sophia insisted, and it's been eye-opening. I never realized how much I took after Dad and always expecting to be the center of attention. I didn't come here to make you feel bad, I said carefully. I just wanted to be treated like I mattered. You do matter, Sophia said firmly, giving James a pointed look. He nodded. You do. And I'm sorry it took me this long to acknowledge that. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Too much history lay between us for that, but it was a beginning. As we said goodbye in the parking lot, James hesitated, then gave me an awkward hug. Nearly a year and a half had passed since the wedding that I didn't attend. An event that had unexpectedly become a turning point not just for me, but for my entire family. My parents visited in June, their first time seeing my life in Denver. I showed them my apartment with its mountain views, my office at the design studio where my work was prominently displayed, the local cafes and hiking trails that had become part of my daily life. You've built something beautiful here, my mother said on their last evening, sitting on my balcony watching the sunset. There was a note of surprise in her voice, but also something else, a grudging respect. Thank you, I said simply. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner, she added after a moment. Comments were sometimes made that set my teeth on edge. But there was a difference. When I gently pointed these things out, they didn't immediately become defensive. She told me during one of our lunches. She wanted my stuffing recipe. Said she remembered you always loved it at Thanksgiving. That's surprising, I said. My grandmother smiled. People can change when given good reason. You standing up for yourself gave them that reason. It forced them to see themselves differently. In August, I received an unexpected email from my mother. Let me know what dishes you prefer to have. I'm trying to include everyone's favorites. I read the email to Mark that evening. What do you think? I asked. I think it sounds like she's trying. He said. And from everything you've told me, that's significant progress. I decided to accept the invitation but on my own terms. I'd love to come, I wrote back. But I can only stay for the weekend, I have work commitments. And I'd like to bring Mark. As for favorites, you know I've always loved Grandma Ruth's stuffing. The response came quickly. I shared the news on our family group chat. A new development in our communication. The responses were immediate and for once focused entirely on me. Dad. Congratulations. Always knew you had it in you. Mom. So proud of you, honey. We need to celebrate when you're here for Thanksgiving. Ashley. OMG, that's amazing. Way to go, sis. James. Impressive. Sophia and I want to hear all about it when we see you. I stared at the messages, feeling a complex mix of emotions, gratification at the recognition, a lingering wariness born from years of disappointment, but also a cautious hope that perhaps things really were changing. Mark and I had grown closer over the months, but as a complete person with my own desires and value. I love how you don't shrink yourself. He told me one evening as we cooked dinner together in my apartment. When I met you, I thought about how different I was now from the person who had moved to Denver 2 years ago, still seeking validation from people determined not to give it. A small gathering at their home. Just family and close friends. The invitation read. No gifts necessary. Your presence is all we want. I attended with Mark. Brace for old patterns to reassert themselves. But something had shifted in James. He made a point of introducing me to his friends, highlighting my recent promotion, asking my opinion on their recent home renovation. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when I felt the old invisibility creeping in. But the effort was unmistakable. As we were leaving, James pulled me aside. I'm glad you came, he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. I know things haven't been great between us for a long time, but I'm trying to be better. Sophia has helped me see a lot of things more clearly. I appreciate that, I said. I'm trying too, to let go of old hurts, to be open to change. He nodded, then surprised me with a question. Do you remember when we were kids, and you used to draw those comics about our family? The Adventures of the Walker Family, you called them. I blinked, startled that he remembered. Yes. I used to leave them on your desk every Sunday. I kept them, he said. All of them. Found them when we were packing for the move last year. You made me the hero in every story. Even though I was a pretty terrible brother most of the time. I didn't know what to say. The comics had been my way of trying to connect with him. To create a family narrative where we were all important to each other. Anyway, he continued awkwardly. I just wanted you to know that I noticed. Even if I didn't show it at the time. It wasn't a grand reconciliation or a complete transformation. James was still James, sometimes self-centered, often oblivious. My parents still occasionally fell into old patterns. And I had changed too. I no longer staked my worth on their validation. I had built a life rich with meaningful work, genuine friendships, and love based on mutual respect. I had learned to set boundaries and stand by them, to express my needs without apology, to recognize when relationships were worth fighting for, and when it was time to step back. As Thanksgiving approached, I felt a sense of calm anticipation rather than the familiar dread. This would be the first holiday I'd spent with my family since establishing firm boundaries. I knew there would be challenges, old patterns trying to reassert themselves. But I also knew I was strong enough to navigate them without losing myself in the process. The night before Mark and I were set to fly to Arizona, my grandmother called. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. "It's going to be interesting." "You know what I'm proud of," she said. "You've forgiven them without forgetting. That's the true balance, holding people accountable while still leaving room for them to do better." I learned from the best, I told her, making her laugh. "Just remember, you've already won the most important battle. You know who you are now, separate from how they see you. Hold on to that." Planning to wear them for Thanksgiving dinner. A reminder of my strength, my worth, and the person who had always seen me clearly. The journey wasn't over. Healing family dynamics is never a straight line. It's a winding path with progress and setbacks, moments of connection and painful reminders of old wounds. But for the first time, it felt like we were all walking that path together, however imperfectly, rather than me walking it alone. So what did I learn from all this? That sometimes the greatest act of love, both for yourself and your family, is to stand firm in your truth. That being seen and valued isn't something you can earn through achievement or self-erasure. It's something you claim by refusing to be overlooked. And that family, at its best, should be a place where everyone has room to be fully themselves, not just the roles they've been assigned. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? How did you navigate that challenge? Drop a comment below and share your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, you deserve to be seen and valued exactly as you are. Thank you for listening to my story.